Brad Pitt, one of the most famous men on the planet, recently dropped a bombshell that left everyone stunned. He confessed that Jennifer Aniston, his ex-wife, was the love of his life. After years of scandal, public breakups, and his whirlwind romance with Angelina Jolie, Brad's admission has reignited the curiosity of fans everywhere. The love story between Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston is one of those classic Hollywood romances that felt like it was straight out of a fairy tale. It all started in 1998 when the two superstars were introduced by their agents, which honestly feels like the most Hollywood way to meet, right? Imagine the scene, both of them at the height of their careers, with Jennifer dominating the TV world as Rachel Green on Friends and Brad well on his way to being one of the biggest movie stars in the world. But even with all their fame, their early relationship was kept pretty low-key. At the time, Jennifer was already a household name thanks to Friends. The show had become a cultural phenomenon, and she was one of the most recognizable faces on television. Her quirky, lovable character had captured the hearts of millions, and her iconic hairstyle had women all over the world rushing to salons to get the Rachel. Brad, on the other hand, was Hollywood's golden boy. He had already starred in hits like Fight Club, 7, and 12 Monkeys, proving himself as not just a pretty face but a serious actor with real talent. They were both riding high in their respective careers, and when news broke that they were dating, it felt like a match made in heaven. Despite their massive fame, Brad and Jennifer's courtship was surprisingly low profile in the beginning. They weren't the type to flaunt their relationship for the cameras. There were no over-the-top PDA moments, no staged paparazzi photo shoots. Instead, they kept things relatively private, trying to build their relationship away from the intense media scrutiny that comes with being two of the most famous people in the world. They didn't rush into anything either, which only fueled more curiosity from the public. Everyone wanted to know more about the couple that seemed too perfect to be true. And then came the wedding. In 2000, after 2 years of dating, Brad and Jennifer tied the knot in a lavish, star-studded ceremony in Malibu. It was the kind of wedding that only Hollywood royalty could pull off. Picture this, a gorgeous beachside setting complete with a sprawling estate, a gospel choir, fireworks, and a guest list filled with A-listers. Everything about the wedding screamed perfection, from Jennifer's designer gown to the way they were described as inseparable throughout the night. It was one of those moments where the world couldn't help but watch in awe of the seemingly flawless couple. The media coverage of their wedding was insane. Magazines and tabloids couldn't get enough of Brad and Jennifer, labeling them Hollywood's golden couple and America's sweethearts. They were both beautiful, talented, and successful, but what made them even more lovable was how down-to-earth they appeared. Unlike some other celebrity couples who flaunt their wealth and privilege, Brad and Jennifer seemed relatable. They laughed together, had playful banter, and never took themselves too seriously. You could easily imagine grabbing a drink with them at a bar and having a good time, which made them even more adored by fans. In interviews, both Brad and Jennifer often spoke fondly of each other, with Brad once calling Jennifer his soulmate. On red carpets, they were constantly spotted holding hands, whispering to each other, and flashing smiles that made it seem like nothing could come between them. There was a genuine warmth between them that wasn't always common in celebrity relationships. I mean, it wasn't just that they looked good together, though, let's be real, they were gorgeous, but they also seemed to genuinely enjoy each other's company, which made the public fall even more in love with them as a couple. Fans couldn't get enough of Brad and Jennifer. Whether it was a casual sighting of them on the streets of LA or a glamorous appearance at a movie premiere, the media portrayed them as this perfect couple who had it all: fame, fortune, and a fairy tale love story. And for a while, it really did seem that way. They were constantly on magazine covers, with headlines boasting about their strong relationship, how they were both incredibly supportive of each other's careers, and how they balanced their busy schedules with ease. But what really made them stand out was how approachable they were. Despite their massive fame, both Brad and Jennifer had this unique ability to come across as everyday people. They didn't put on airs or act like they were better than anyone else, even though they were two of the biggest stars on the planet. In interviews, they came off as kind, funny, and humble. They weren't the type to show off their luxurious lives, which made people feel even more connected to them. Fans saw Brad and Jennifer as a symbol of what love could be like in Hollywood, a rare true connection in a place where relationships often crumbled under the weight of fame. For a brief moment, it seemed like they had it all. They were the couple everyone rooted for, the ones you looked at and thought, if they can make it work, maybe there's hope for the rest of us. From the outside, Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston looked like they had it all. But even the most beautiful love stories can't escape the reality of life. And for them, the pressures of their booming careers began to take a toll on their marriage. At the time, Brad was at the peak of his career, starring in back-to-back blockbuster films. Movies like Ocean's 11, Troy, and Fight Club made him one of Hollywood's most sought-after actors. His career was skyrocketing, and with that came the usual grind of long hours on set, international press tours, and months spent away from home. It wasn't just about acting for Brad, either. He was starting to take on more serious roles, trying to prove he was more than just a pretty face. The ambition to do more, be more, was driving him and keeping him incredibly busy. On the other hand, Jennifer was also juggling a demanding schedule. She was still starring in Friends, one of the most successful TV shows of all time, but she was also trying to transition into film. Jennifer had landed a few roles in movies like The Good Girl and Bruce Almighty, and while they gave her more credibility as a film actress, they didn't offer the same level of success she had on TV. Still, she was determined to make it work. Between filming seasons of Friends and working on her movie projects, her schedule was packed, leaving very little time for her personal life. It's no secret that Hollywood careers are demanding, but when both partners are in the thick of it, things get complicated. The frequent separations and conflicting schedules meant that Brad and Jennifer were spending less and less time together. And let's be real, when two people in a relationship are constantly apart, it can start to wear on even the strongest of marriages. The media started picking up on the cracks, with rumors swirling about tension in their relationship. Tabloids speculated endlessly, publishing stories that the couple was drifting apart. And while they tried to keep things private, the strain was evident to those who looked closely. One of the most significant sources of tension was Jennifer's desire to start a family. In interviews, she had openly talked about her dreams of becoming a mother. She once said, "It's time. It's time, you know? I think you can work with a baby. I think you can work pregnant. I think you can do all of it. So I'm just truly looking forward to slowing down." For Jennifer, family was a priority, and she was ready to put down roots, settle into motherhood, and maybe even take a break from her career to focus on that. But Brad's outlook seemed a little more complicated. While he hadn't ruled out the idea of having children, his career was still his main focus. In interviews, Brad often spoke about wanting a family one day, but his comments were more vague, and he didn't seem to share Jennifer's sense of urgency. He was deep in the middle of his career high, taking on projects left and right, and the timing just didn't seem right for him. Their differing desires, Jennifer wanting to start a family while Brad seemed more focused on his next big role, undoubtedly caused friction. It's hard to say if this was the deal-breaker, but it certainly didn't help the growing distance between them. The media, of course, picked up on this too, with stories speculating that Brad wasn't ready for fatherhood and that Jennifer felt disappointed by his reluctance. Then came the turning point in their marriage, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. When Brad signed on to star in the action comedy alongside Angelina Jolie in 2004, no one could have predicted the whirlwind that was about to unfold. Brad and Angelina's chemistry on set was undeniable, and while the movie required them to play a married couple caught in a web of lies and betrayal, it wasn't long before rumors started swirling that art was imitating life. Angelina, who was single at the time, was already known for her bold and adventurous personality, and it was clear she and Brad had formed a connection. Meanwhile, Jennifer was tied up with her own career commitments, filming Friends and working on her movie projects. She wasn't able to join Brad on location during the months he spent shooting Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which left Brad and Angelina to spend a lot of time together, both on and off set. This is where things really started to unravel. While Brad and Angelina initially denied any romantic involvement, the rumors only intensified, especially when they were spotted spending time together outside of work. By the time Mr. and Mrs. Smith wrapped, the damage had already been done. Brad and Jennifer's marriage was on shaky ground, and the constant media attention wasn't helping. People couldn't stop talking about Brad and Angelina, and the whispers of an affair became impossible to ignore. Jennifer later spoke about this difficult time in her life, acknowledging that she felt blindsided by the way things unfolded. Looking back, the combination of their demanding careers, differing desires about family, and the emergence of Angelina Jolie into the picture created a perfect storm that ultimately led to the breakdown of Brad and Jennifer's marriage. They announced their separation in early 2005, and it wasn't long before Brad and Angelina went public with their relationship. The Brangelina scandal, a Hollywood affair, unfolds. The Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie scandal is one of Hollywood's most talked about affairs, and it all began during the filming of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It was 2004, and Brad was cast alongside Angelina in what was supposed to be just another action comedy about a married couple with a deadly secret. They were both assassins, but what happened off-screen was far more explosive than anything in the script. From the very beginning of production, there was an undeniable spark between Brad and Angelina. Watching them on screen, you could practically feel the chemistry radiating through the scenes. In moments where their characters bickered, fought, and eventually fell into a passionate embrace, it wasn't hard to believe that something more was brewing behind the scenes. Fans noticed. The media noticed. And soon, the rumors started to spread like wildfire. At first, Brad and Angelina were quick to shut down any speculation of an affair. In interviews, they insisted they were just colleagues and friends. Angelina, who had already gained a reputation for being bold and unpredictable, seemed unfazed by the rumors. Brad was equally dismissive, claiming that he and Jennifer Aniston were still happily married. But the more the two appeared together on screen, the harder it became for the public to ignore the mounting rumors. People began to question whether there was more to their on-screen chemistry than met the eye. The media, of course, had a field day with it. Tabloids churned out story after story speculating about the state of Brad and Jennifer's marriage, while some publications boldly claimed Brad and Angelina were more than just friends. Paparazzi started to camp outside the Mr. and Mrs. Smith set, snapping photos of Brad and Angelina laughing between takes, lingering a little too long during breaks, and just looking way too cozy for two people who were supposedly just working together. As the months wore on, the rumors grew louder, and suddenly it wasn't just about a possible affair, it was about Jennifer Aniston, America's sweetheart, being caught in the middle of a scandal that the world couldn't stop obsessing over. It didn't help that Jennifer had been relatively quiet about the whole situation at first. But as the tabloids painted her as the scorned wife, it was clear that the media had taken sides, and most of them were on Jennifer's team. In January 2005, the bomb dropped. Brad and Jennifer announced their separation, sending shockwaves through Hollywood and the fan base that had adored them for years. The official statement was polite, something along the lines of, "We've amicably decided to separate," but everyone knew what was really going on. The timing of their breakup, right in the middle of the Mr. and Mrs. Smith rumors, seemed like too much of a coincidence. Suddenly, Jennifer Aniston was thrust into the media spotlight in a way she'd never been before. Every magazine cover, every gossip show, every tabloid was focused on one question: did Brad cheat on Jennifer with Angelina? For a while, Jennifer stayed quiet, processing the very public dissolution of her marriage. But eventually, in interviews, she opened up about her heartbreak. In one memorable interview with Vanity Fair, Jennifer famously said, "There's a sensitivity chip that's missing," which many took as a dig at Brad and his perceived lack of empathy for what she was going through. Jennifer's pain was palpable. She had been blindsided by the way everything had unfolded, and her words resonated with fans who saw her as the victim in the whole affair. People rallied behind her, viewing Brad and Angelina as the villains who had torn apart one of Hollywood's most beloved couples. For many, Jennifer's heartbreak became their heartbreak. She was the relatable girl next door who had been wronged, and the public sympathy for her was overwhelming. Meanwhile, Brad and Angelina continued to deny that anything inappropriate had happened while Brad was still married. They stuck to the story that they were just friends during the filming of Mr. and Mrs. Smith and only became romantically involved after Brad's separation from Jennifer. But despite their denials, the timeline told a different story. Just weeks after Brad and Jennifer's official separation, rumors started swirling that Brad and Angelina had been spotted together on a private getaway. The most damning piece of evidence came a few months later when Brad was photographed with Angelina and her adopted son, Maddox, in Kenya. The pictures showed Brad playing with Maddox on the beach, looking every bit the doting father figure while Angelina watched from nearby. For many, this was the confirmation they needed: Brad had moved on, and it seemed he was already settling into a new life with Angelina and her son. The Kenya trip marked the unofficial beginning of Brangelina. The media frenzy that followed was unlike anything Hollywood had ever seen. Magazines plastered the photos of Brad and Angelina on every cover, dissecting every detail of their relationship. Fans of Brad and Jennifer were devastated, and the betrayal felt personal to many who had idolized their marriage. Jennifer, understandably, stayed out of the public eye as much as she could during this time, trying to process the end of her relationship while the world watched. As for Brad, he remained relatively quiet about the whole ordeal. When asked about the affair rumors, he deflected, insisting that his relationship with Angelina had only begun after his marriage to Jennifer was over. But for those who had followed the story from the beginning, the timeline seemed too convenient. The speed at which Brad and Angelina went from just friends to a full-fledged family unit left little doubt in people's minds that there had been some overlap. The Brangelina scandal rocked Hollywood, not just because of the affair itself, but because of who was involved. Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, and Jennifer Aniston were three of the biggest names in the industry, and their personal lives had become public property. For Brad and Angelina, their relationship would go on to dominate headlines for years, while Jennifer was left to rebuild her life after the media storm. Despite the scandal that surrounded the early days of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie's relationship, it didn't take long for Brangelina to become one of the most talked about couples in Hollywood, and not just because of their romance. Once they went public, Brad and Angelina quickly transformed from tabloid fodder to a global power couple. And let's be honest, people were absolutely fascinated by them. In the years that followed, Brad and Angelina built a life that seemed larger than anything Hollywood had seen before. They weren't just a glamorous couple on red carpets, they were world travelers, adopting children from different countries and balancing their film careers with humanitarian efforts. It was like watching two of the most beautiful people on the planet become the ultimate modern family, and the media couldn't get enough. One of the biggest things that set Brad and Angelina apart from other celebrity couples was how they used their fame. Instead of focusing solely on their careers or personal lives, they leveraged their star power for social causes, making them seem both glamorous and socially conscious. For the public, they became this iconic couple who managed to live in two worlds, one where they were seen as untouchable Hollywood elites and another where they were on the ground in refugee camps or building homes for the underprivileged. It was this duality that made them so compelling to watch. At the same time, their family life was front-page news. In 2002, Angelina had already adopted her first son, Maddox, from Cambodia, but once Brad was in the picture, they became a team when it came to expanding their family. In 2005, just months after Brad and Jennifer Aniston finalized their divorce, Brad accompanied Angelina to Ethiopia, where they adopted their second child, Sahara. Then, in 2006, the world practically exploded when Angelina confirmed she was pregnant with their first biological child, Shiloh. It felt like the entire world was on baby watch, waiting for the birth of Brangelina's golden child. Shiloh was born in Namibia, with the couple going to great lengths to ensure privacy during the birth, which only fueled the media frenzy even more. Everyone wanted a glimpse of this chosen child, and when the first photos of baby Shiloh were released, they were splashed across magazines everywhere. But Brad and Angelina weren't done growing their family just yet. In 2007, they adopted Pax from Vietnam, and in 2008, Angelina gave birth to twins, Knox and Vivian, making the Brangelina clan a total of 6 children. Their parenting style was also something that intrigued the public. In interviews, both Brad and Angelina talked openly about their blended family, their commitment to raising their children to be aware of the world, and their desire to teach them about different cultures. It wasn't just the fact that they had 6 kids from all corners of the globe, it was how they approached parenthood that made headlines. They emphasized that they wanted their children to grow up with a sense of purpose, even amid the wealth and fame they were surrounded by. Angelina once said, "I want to raise my children as global citizens, not as little celebrities." It was a perspective that set them apart from other high-profile families, and fans admired them for it. Brad and Angelina didn't shy away from sharing intimate details about their family life, whether it was how they celebrated cultural traditions from their children's birth countries or how they handled the chaos of parenting 6 kids while still working in Hollywood. Beyond their family, Brad and Angelina cemented themselves as a true power couple through their philanthropic efforts. Angelina, of course, had been involved in humanitarian work for years before she met Brad. As a UN Refugee Agency Goodwill Ambassador, she had traveled to war-torn regions and advocated for refugees long before she became Mrs. Smith. But once Brad joined her in this mission, their impact seemed to double. The two of them were often seen together on humanitarian trips, using their fame to bring attention to global issues like poverty, education, and refugees. Angelina later became a special envoy for the UN Refugee Agency, and her work only intensified as her family grew. She wasn't just another celebrity spokesperson, she was in the field, visiting camps and meeting with global leaders to discuss policy changes. And Brad was right there by her side, supporting her every step of the way. Brad, for his part, focused much of his efforts on environmental and housing causes. His Make It Right Foundation, which aimed to build sustainable homes for victims of Hurricane Katrina, gained widespread praise. Brad was deeply involved in the project, often seen visiting New Orleans to oversee the construction of the homes. He and Angelina were using their platforms for causes bigger than themselves, and it made them seem like this untouchable couple who were living on a completely different level than everyone else. What made Brangelina so fascinating wasn't just that they were beautiful and successful, it was that they were using their influence for good. They weren't just attending charity galas or writing checks, they were out there, boots on the ground, making a difference. And for many fans, it was impossible not to admire that. They were both wildly famous and deeply involved in causes that mattered, which made them feel almost larger than life. Even though their relationship had started under controversial circumstances, Brad and Angelina managed to rise above it, creating a new narrative for themselves as a couple who weren't just about glitz and glamour but about making the world a better place. Despite the scandal that had followed them from the beginning, their philanthropic efforts, global family, and undeniable chemistry made them one of the most iconic couples in Hollywood history. Then came Brad's shocking confession: Jennifer was the love of his life. After years of swirling rumors, public heartbreak, and media-fueled drama, Brad Pitt dropped a bombshell that left everyone stunned. Jennifer Aniston was, in his words, the love of my life. Can you imagine? After all the chaos of their breakup, Brad and Angelina's rollercoaster relationship, and everything that happened in between, Brad came out and admitted that he might have made a mistake by letting Jennifer go. It was one of those moments that made everyone stop in their tracks. The confession didn't come out of nowhere, though. Over the years, Brad had spoken fondly of Jennifer in various interviews, but nothing quite as vulnerable or revealing as this. There were always hints that maybe he regretted how things ended between them, whether it was the way he reflected on their time together or his silence when asked about what went wrong. You could sense there was something more there, something he wasn't ready to admit until much later. Fans, of course, were sent into a frenzy. Brad and Jennifer had been Hollywood's golden couple back in the early 2000s, and their split had devastated people who looked up to them as the ultimate relationship goals. So hearing Brad openly admit that Jennifer was the love of his life felt like a validation of what fans had always believed, that he should have never let her go. People took to social media, debating whether his confession was a genuine expression of regret or just a way to make peace with his past. Either way, it reignited the old question: what if Brad and Jennifer were meant to be after all? What really got the rumor mill going again, though, was their friendly reunion at the 2020 SAG Awards. For the first time in years, Brad and Jennifer were photographed together, and it didn't take long for people to lose their minds. The photos were everywhere, Brad holding Jennifer's hand, the two of them laughing, looking at each other with those warm, familiar smiles. It was a moment that felt like a flashback to when they were the it couple. The media jumped on it with headlines speculating that maybe, just maybe, Brad's confession was the start of something new. To make things even more interesting, the world was once again left wondering, could there be a second chapter for Brad and Jennifer? Jennifer had been single for a while by then, having finalized her divorce from Justin. Thorough with both Brad and Jennifer no longer tied to other partners, fans were eager to believe that this could be the beginning of a reconciliation. The internet exploded with theories, from secret meetings to whispers that the two had been spending more time together behind the scenes. But despite all the speculation, neither Brad nor Jennifer gave any solid confirmation that they were getting back together. Still, that SAG Awards moment was enough to keep the rumors alive for a long time. But here's the question everyone was asking: what does Brad's confession really mean? Why did he decide to admit this after so many years, and what was going through his mind when he finally said it? Some people believe that after his tumultuous divorce from Angelina Jolie, Brad had time to reflect on his past, and maybe that's when he realized what he had lost. It's not uncommon for people to look back on their first big love and wonder, what if? Perhaps in Brad's case, with all the chaos that came with Brangelina, he realized that the stability and genuine connection he had with Jennifer was something he hadn't appreciated enough at the time. For others, Brad's confession felt more like a case of the one who got away. We've all heard the phrase before, and it's usually about that one person who, for whatever reason, slips through your fingers. No matter what happens afterward, they remain a significant what if in your life. Maybe for Brad, Jennifer represented that someone he shared a deep bond with, but circumstances and decisions pulled them apart. When you look at it that way, his confession isn't just about regret, it's about acknowledging that his relationship with Jennifer was something special, something that still matters to him even after all these years. Then again, there's also the idea that Brad's confession was a way of making peace with the past. After everything that happened with Angelina, the highs of their relationship, the adoption of their children, the scandalous fallout, maybe Brad just wanted to set the record straight and be honest about his feelings. It could be less about rekindling things with Jennifer and more about closing that chapter in his life with honesty and reflection. Sometimes admitting the truth is just about healing, not necessarily about looking for a second chance. What's clear is that the public has never stopped being fascinated by the love triangle of Brad, Jennifer, and Angelina. Even after all these years, people are still drawn to their story, maybe because it feels so relatable despite its Hollywood backdrop. We've all experienced love, heartbreak, and those lingering what-if thoughts. The fact that these three megastars went through it all so publicly made it feel like we were part of their journey, even though we were just watching from the sidelines. Brad's confession might have come too late for a reconciliation, or maybe it's just the start of a new chapter. Whether or not they ever rekindle their romance, the fact remains that Brad Pitt's admission shook things up in a way no one expected. Jennifer, for her part, has handled it with grace, always speaking kindly about Brad and never dwelling on the past too much. But you have to wonder, does she ever think about what might have been? Jennifer Aniston's life after her split from Brad Pitt has been nothing short of a masterclass in grace, resilience, and personal growth. While her public image took a hit during the Brangelina scandal, she never let it define her. Instead, Jennifer continued to shine both personally and professionally, proving that she was more than just Brad Pitt's ex-wife. She carved out her own path, and honestly, who wouldn't admire her for how she handled everything? In the years following the breakup, Jennifer's film career really began to take off. Sure, she was already a household name thanks to Friends, but post-Brad, she found herself headlining a number of successful movies. From the breakup to Marley and Me, she became a box office draw in her own right. Not to mention, she continued to take on roles that showed her versatility as an actress, like her work in Cake, which earned her critical acclaim. All the while, she maintained her beloved status as one of Hollywood's most relatable and down-to-earth stars. People just love Jennifer because, despite all the fame, she still feels like someone you could hang out with over a glass of wine. Of course, her personal life remained a hot topic for the tabloids. After Brad, Jennifer had a few high-profile relationships, including one with actor Vince Vaughn and later musician John Mayer. Eventually, she married actor Justin Theroux in 2015, and for a while, it seemed like she had found her happily ever after. But even when that marriage ended in 2017, Jennifer handled it with the same dignity she always has: no public mudslinging, no dramatic interviews, just two people going their separate ways. It's this approach to her relationships that has made Jennifer so admired. She's managed to keep her personal struggles private while still being honest and candid in her interviews about moving forward and growing. When it comes to Brad Pitt's recent confession that she was the love of his life, you can't help but wonder how Jennifer feels about it. In true Jennifer fashion, she's remained classy and gracious, even as the media has fanned the flames of speculation about a possible reconciliation. She's always been careful in interviews, never throwing Brad under the bus. And when asked about him, she often responds with a calm, knowing smile. It's clear that she's forgiven him, but she's also moved on. In one interview, she talked about the importance of forgiveness and how holding on to anger only holds you back. That's Jennifer in a nutshell. She's all about positivity and moving forward. As for the rumors about rekindling their friendship, Jennifer has played it cool. When they were spotted chatting and smiling at the 2020 SAG Awards, the world lost its collective mind. But Jennifer didn't seem to be buying into the hype. She's been through the tabloid ringer enough to know how to navigate the attention with grace. Whether or not Brad's confession has stirred up old feelings, Jennifer seems to have made peace with her past and is focused on the future, just like she's always done. In the end, Jennifer Aniston's post-Brad life is a story of resilience, growth, and staying true to herself. She's continued to be one of Hollywood's most beloved figures, and honestly, she's done it on her own terms. That's what makes her story so compelling. She's proof that even after heartbreak, you can still thrive. So what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.